One of the things that Chuck E. Cheese, Atari, I feel like I maybe peaked too early because I also did navigation systems. Like whenever you use any kind of navigation in your car or anything, that's all based on my software. I never get credit for that. Not that I'm complaining. I've done a lot of different companies because I have 5-year ADD. Once I get it running like a top, it's really boring. And so, as I analyze sort of the last third of my life, because yes, I plan to live to 120, but more than that, getting older is not an option. The alternative is not acceptable. But getting dumb is. And so what I really want to do is make sure that I have an interesting and happy life, and that my brain just gets better and better. And so I've done a lot of research, and anti-aging games is really a lot about how do you fundamentally keep your mind quick, fast, good. And I've also been doing an awful lot of kind of anecdotal research. Like when I see somebody that's really old, I go up and I talk to them, and I say, what's your lifestyle? What do you do? And we were just recently in Ireland for Christmas. West Ireland for Christmas. Nobody goes to West Ireland for Christmas. It's rainy, it's windy, it's horrible. But if you can crawl to a pub, it's pretty cool. So anyway, that was our thing. And there was a guy there, he had to be 100. And I asked him, I said, how old are you? He says, 94. And I said, well, what do you do every day? He says, oh, I just live a mile down the road, and I come down here and I have a Guinness. Social, interesting, a little bit of exercise, and Guinness. Perhaps that's the key to a long life. I don't know. Let me talk about technology for a minute. The Internet of Things. What is that? Basically, your community, your house, everything will be wired. You will no longer be alone. And that is going to change everything. Whether it's Snapchat or Facebook or your toilet telling you that you're pregnant. If you're a 74-year-old woman, that will be a shock. However, it turns out there are all kinds of things that can be detected real time to extend your life. There are trace molecules right now that indicate whether you have prostate cancer, whether you have a large bowel polyp. All these things with early detection. I'm on a board of a company that's doing hearing glasses. And for me, even though I sort of have good hearing, I hate going to restaurants because of the noise. What this does is it lets you focus your hearing on who you're looking at. And all of a sudden, restaurant conversation changes. It's called Hear Glass. This is kind of a commercial. Anybody who wants to get involved with that company, let me know, and I'll set you up. Medical diagnostics. People can be wired, and all of a sudden, you can track heart rate, arrhythmia, blood pressure, blood oxygen, a whole bunch of characteristics that are really important. Accelerometers, so that if you're not getting enough exercise, it can tweak you. Basically shock you until you get up. I got to tell you, Remember Tank, the Atari game where you were driving tanks around and all that? We thought, hey, let's see if we can make it kind of fun so that when you got hit by the opposing tank, it would shock you. This is one of those ideas that was really not a good one. But it tells you something about human beings. We decided, well, let's have a knob that you could dial in how intense the shock would be. So you could kind of choose. Well, when we put it on test, the machine might as well have been a button or a switch. It was either full on or full off. But the thing that was amazing about it is that the unit earned about 1/3 as much money as one that didn't. And so what it was is people didn't want to get shocked, but they didn't want the shame of turning it off. Who knew? Okay. There were 2 older women in a community, and they were sitting there talking, and they said, incidentally, this is a joke that my wife said was inappropriate. And so I'm going to say it anyway. And they said, it's so boring around here, I think we should streak. The other lady said, streak? You mean take all our clothes off and run around the community? He said, yeah, it's so boring, why not? Just spice things up a little bit. And so they took their clothes off and started running around the community. And Abe and Mike, over sitting on another bench, was saying, hey, you know, Mike's eyesight wasn't great. He says, hey, what's that over there? Two women running? He says, yeah. He says, well, what are they wearing? And Abe says, I don't know, but it sure could stand a pressing. Okay. That was my inappropriate joke. I've got one more joke that I actually like right now. The past, present, and future walked into a bar. It was tense. Anyway, enough of that. So we have this ability to constantly monitor. And I think that one of the features of people with declining health want to know all the things. And it turns out that the stats, for those of us who have been kind of data wonks, really like. And I think that that's something that we should look at. My current company is Modal VR, and it's games that you can run around and experience different things. And I think that as mobility decreases, you may still wish to go to Venice. And so imagine, if you would, there's an internet link to a little robot in Venice, and you're in virtual reality, and everywhere you look, the robot looks, and it's like being in Venice with there. We can even have a situation where you can disable the smell or enable the smell. Disable in the case of Venice. But won't this be fun? Amazon Echo. How many of you have one? I believe that there will not be a single assisted living facility that will not have Echo everywhere. I listen to the radio on mine. I listen to audiobooks. Before I go, I always say, Alexa, where am I going? Because I have my calendar in there. Last Christmas, I had Alexa so that I could walk into the house and say, Alexa, turn on Christmas. The lights would go on in the tree, the lights outside would go on, and it'd start playing Christmas carols. I thought that was really cool. My wife is not that engaged in that. She doesn't like all this stuff. She says, why can't you just flip the switch? But anyway, but I think that the whole idea of voice-activated features become very important because you don't have to search for a remote control. Everybody can speak to a certain extent and be understood. Wheelchairs. Right now, there's a certain class of people who cannot drive a wheelchair. But I'm on the board of a self-driving car company, and we believe we can make a self-driving wheelchair that can totally navigate rough terrain, take a person anywhere by simply telling Alexa, take me to the pharmacy, take me to the cafeteria, take me there. And all of a sudden, you have mobility where previously it required an assistant. Google self-driving cars. Think of it as a way to provide mobility without cost. People need to go to the doctor. Sometimes they need to go to the hospital. Sometimes they need to go just down to the bar. And they can't walk the mile to get a Guinness. All of these things, I think, are one of the possibilities for senior care in the future. Golf carts, self-driving. Robots that run around. This is something I did in the 80s. Boy, was that ever a stinker. I lost a lot of money. The technology just wasn't good enough. And think about assisted living robots that deliver daily, hourly medication, food, communication, companionship. I have a program that I wrote many years ago for this guy. That was an artificial friend. Now you say, oh, that's lame. Well, it turns out that in tests, and we did some tests in a senior living facility where there were people who fell in love with my robot. The robot would listen attentively to their complaints about their back and their legs and the fact that their son John doesn't call them. And I think that the reality of these synthetic constructs are just getting better and better. My wife actually thinks I'm developing a relationship with Alexa, but that's just the way she thinks. You may ask yourself, what is this goofball doing with the light-up shoes? Now, come on, some of you thought that, okay? The reality is we have to be young. We have to think young. We have to be young. And what is young? What does it really mean? Young means to be playful, to not to get too serious about ourselves. Like, do you really think that I'm less smart or less sophisticated by having light-up shoes? Okay, you may, but but at the same time, I think that when we're dealing with people and we want them to be happy, just think about walking into one of your facilities and wearing light-up shoes. Don't you think everybody would like you more? While offering to have you in a conservatorship? my wife is constantly threatening a conservatorship for me. I believe that that's the highest praise that she could possibly give me. Because innovation is really about anarchy. It's about insanity. Because insanity is a judgment call. Now, there's real insanity. There's one, I want to rant for a little bit. It turns out that if you have a particular DNA marker, that aggressive pot smoking gives you a 10 times higher probability of developing schizophrenia. And so as we release, have a more pot-driven environment, I get worried about that. I mean, if you look at the people who are talking to the moon in the homeless community, a significant amount of that is Alzheimer's, and it's growing. And so I think that we need to be really careful and understand that there's a high probability that the baby boomers, as they retire, will have a higher than normal percentage of schizophrenia as part of their core. And that's going to represent an extra burden on society and on the businesses that you have. I don't like this one. This guy is just creepy. But they'll get the design right. Like, don't you think mine was cuter? Huh? Now that's cute, right? Now, what they don't realize, let me tell you the mistake they made. Look at this, and then look at this. Do you know why that's creepy? Head to body ratio. If you want to have a feeling of empathy and love, a big head to body ratio, they've been doing this in cartoons all the time. If you have a normal head to body ratio, you perceive them as being adult. Now, if you have a small head to body ratio, that means you're evil and you live in a volcano with minions. Anyway, the other part that's really important are circadian rhythms. We now know that bright blue wakes you up in the morning, and reds and oranges help you go to sleep. And I'm working on an app. My wife likes to read before she goes to bed. She reads on a Kindle. And I'm going to do an app so that the Kindle goes to the reds and the oranges as the night gets later. I believe that's going to help her sleep a tremendous amount. And bright red or bright blue, when I wake up, it's like a cup of coffee. Now, in the assisted living places that I've gone recently, I've seen a lot of fluorescent lights. If you really want to keep your people awake, just bathe them in fluorescent lights until the lights are out. It's really wrong. And if you replace every fluorescent you have with LEDs that are hue corrected, you'll have a much happier group of people. Better bodies. Turns out that your body and your mind are linked. Who knew? The more you exercise, the better your brain is. If you exercise to 80% of your max, and you can basically get that by 220 minus your age, and then take 80% of that, for 20 minutes, your brain secretes BDNF, which is a brain-derived neurotropic factor. It's a precursor protein for dendrite growth. So some of what you're learning for 3 hours after you exercise is put into firmware. That firmware helps you remediate the effects of dementia and, to a certain extent, Alzheimer's, because you're building new stuff. And even though Alzheimer's, attacks that, you got more to attack. So think about that link. Every assisted living place, every senior should be on a tippy board 15 minutes a day. Why? One of the characteristics of aging is to lose quick muscle response. Quick muscle response is one of those things that causes older people to trip and fall. Because we were all, walking is a controlled fall. Well, if you stumble a little bit and can't figure it out, can't remediate, then you fall and you break a hip. When a person over 65 breaks their hip, their half-life drops to 18 months. Really ugly statistic. Now, a lot of it has to do with osteoporosis, but if you can just remediate by being 15 minutes on a tippy board, and I do it right now, and balance on one foot, those are all good things to do, and it's easy, and it just can change outcomes a lot. I think everybody should read Spark, which is John Ratty, he's on my board, and a really smart guy, Harvard Medical School, and psychiatrist. He has found that just a small amount of exercise changes attitude, enthusiasm, happiness, and your brain. So you'll be tested on this in a couple of weeks. The other thing about it is learning new skills where your brain has to coordinate. Ballroom dancing, Tai Chi. The things that require a certain level of coordination, all these things help your attitude as well as your brain. That's kind of boring, but people can do it. So with Better Minds, these are some games that can be played, and there's more and more of them coming. My son's building a whole bunch of them. He's building a micro amusement park, and one of the things that he has is a series of games, a quiz show, that is totally mediated by technology, but available to everybody there. Everybody becomes a contestant. I play Go. This is an ancient Oriental game. It's very, very difficult to get good at, but it really builds your brain when you first learn it. Understand that a lot of your seniors think they're keeping their minds active by doing the New York Times crossword puzzle. All the neurogenesis happened when they learned how to play. I like to play chess, but all the neurogenesis happened when I was 11. So doing different things is what builds your brain. Now, your clientele loves habits. As we get older, we all get into grooves. Wrong. It's the worst thing. People will be happier and more engaged and have better brains if they do a whole bunch of different things. Right now, there's a big thing going on with German board games, Settlers of Catan, what have you, and it's really sweeping the Gen Xers and the millennials. I believe that by introducing some of these new games, learning how to play, developing strategies of these new games can really be powerful. And I suggest, for the investment of a few $100, you can get, my son I'm talking about my kids all the time, but that's what happens when you get old. He subscribes to a thing where they send him a new board game every month. And we have this Sunday dinner every Sunday night where we get together, we play one of the new games, and drink too much. But that works. We're having a good time. I have 8 kids. And people look at me like I'm kind of a nutcase, but I did it for intellectual arrogance. And I decided that all the dumb people were having too many kids, and that my wife is really smart, and I thought we could afford them, and so I wanted to take one for the global DNA. It is arrogant, you've got to admit, but, you know, my 8 kids are going to continue on wonderful work, except for one of them. And I haven't given up yet. I got to, no, I'm not going to tell that one. World of Warcraft, or Minecraft. One of the maybe best pieces of mind-fixing software out there. Kids love it, seniors should too. It's a building game, it's not too hard, and it pulls in a whole bunch of different things that you can do. Now for another commercial, anti-aging games. Based on some of the research that we did, and my CEO of the company, who is a professor at UCLA, have created a series of games that are aimed at aging populations. And she has actually got it so that it can remediate stroke because it exercises. You know, I don't think I put this on a slide, but there's another book you guys need to read. It's called The Brain That Changes Itself. Any of you read that? Amazing, isn't it? I mean, what it basically says is that anybody can be as smart as they want to be, that they can remediate any kind of paralysis. You can get shot with an arrow through your brain and fix it. You just have to work your butt off. And so much of what we have has been programmed from childhood, trauma in certain areas. There's another thing that I really recommend is you look up the Dunedin study. Dunedin is the furthest south city in New Zealand. And they decided to track every baby that was born in 1972 for the rest of their life. And wow, have they found some crazy things. For example, with the brilliant illumination of 20/20 hindsight, at 4 years old, they could track with an 87% probability whether that 4-year-old was going to end up in jail, whether they could have a stable household, whether they could become financially independent at 4 years old. And so, one of the tests, have you all heard about the marshmallow test? Where you give a 4-year-old one marshmallow and you say, I'm going to leave the room, and when I come back, if you haven't eaten the marshmallow, I'll give you 2. Turns out that test is very informative on later life. It's about impulse control. And when they ask this question, what separates the kids that pass the test and don't pass the test, it turned out that the old story, life is uncertain, have dessert first, was true. That if the kid had been raised in a chaotic household, in which the future was uncertain. They would fail the test every time. And that had long-term repercussions on their life. Oh, I did have that. I thought I was going to do that. But anyway, this is a really good book. Okay, how do you make people more happy? I believe that every assisted living place should have a green screen studio. I think that every senior should record their life stories. And it may be just audio, just a little audio studio. Do a blog. Right now, there are 14-year-old girls that do haul videos. Now, do you know what a haul video is? I didn't. They basically film themselves or in their bedrooms putting on makeup and talking about it, talking about how they mix and match clothing. There are 10 of them that are making more than $4 million a year. YouTube. And so you ask yourself, okay, knowing that, is there a place for a senior blog? Because as we get older and more people are plugged in and feel like YouTube is part of their environment, I think that's kind of fun. It can work. Of course, pottery is still fun, doing things with your hands. When I was thinking about what I would like, what kind of things I would like to be in an assisted community, I thought, gee, maybe if they had better 3D printers, that would make me fun. I want access to a really good laser cutter and NC router, because I've got stuff I want to build. And my garage is full, and I don't have room. So, and plus, my sons all have that stuff, and I can go down and use it. But I'd really like to have it next door. And when there was, Kim was talking about, we work and then we live. Wow. I could see myself doing that. My wife wouldn't go with me, but I'd go. No, I actually wouldn't, because she's such a great cook. We've been married 40 years, and I can honestly say I'd do it all over again. Now, isn't that lucky? She wouldn't, but I definitely. But it's really a good thing. Video games. Seniors need to play at least an hour a day in video games, maybe 2, because there's some really good stuff. And there's one here. How many of you played Let's Just Dance? Now, here's the question. Is Just Dance equally fun when you're not drunk? I don't know. But I can tell you right now that I have the definitive version of Flashdance myself. And Ghostbusters, man, boom, 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 boom. What Just Dance is, it's a 3D camera that watches the people. You can take up to 4 people, and you have to mimic the motion. It's great exercise. You end up after a song sweating like a pig and having a ball. And then you can play it back, and everybody laughs and points at you and makes fun of you, but it's really, really a good time. This should be in part of every senior facility all the time. I tried to find one with seniors doing it, and they weren't there, but it is a ball. You got to do it. Just Dance. And you can get various things with different music. You could get music from the 70s, from the 80s, maybe even from the 40s, who knows? You know, I'm actually not a baby boomer. I was born during the Second World War. I'm 74, and my objective is to live to be 120 at least. Did you know that there's a couple of towns in Italy where the average age is over 100? And the only thing that they could figure out that was different than that is that they had a lot of fast days and that they had a lot of rosemary in their diet. So I'm doing both of those. Not sure if it's going to be causal. For the last 5 years, I've been playing the dice game. The dice game, January 1 of every year, I throw the dice. And I make a list, I do it a little scientific, of 25 things that I can do in a year, that I can accomplish in a year. And then I pick them out, put a number on them, throw the dice, and I have to do that in a year. And wow, it has made me so happy. And you say, what do you mean? Well, okay. The first year that I did it, it said, write a book. Now, the reason you have to have 25 things is that everybody self-edits. They think through things and they say, I'm not going to do this. Like for me, writing a book was stupid. I almost couldn't graduate from college because my English skills were so bad. I'm dyslexic, I can't spell. I think it's perfectly fine to change tenses 3 times in a paragraph. And if it weren't for girlfriends or wife, I would have never graduated from high school. I didn't have a wife in high school, but it was girlfriends. Anyway, so because the dice told me to, I said, okay, I'm going to write a book. Now, I really love science fiction. And incidentally, everybody here needs to read 3 science fiction books every year. Science fiction is lubrication for forward thought, to be able to embrace the future. If you don't do it, the future is going to really mess with your heads. All the cool stuff in the future has already been figured out. So read science fiction. Anyway, so I started writing a science fiction book. And believe it or not, I kind of enjoyed it. I can type fast, and I had that book knocked out in about 3 weeks. And I went to think if I could get it published. And I went to a publisher, and they said, well, no, it's pretty lousy. It was nice. They said it nicer than that, but that was ... We want a book that only you can write. I said, what is it? He said, well, I don't know, but we've got the name for it. And I said, what is it? He says, Finding the Next Steve Jobs, because I was the only person that ever hired Steve. I also had the chance to own a third of Apple computer for $50,000, which I said no to. I've subsequently regretted that. But anyway, so I wrote the book, got it published. It really changed the way I look at it. I've got 2 more books on the way, and I'm actually think I can get my science fiction book published because I fixed it a little bit, because now I'm a published author, and so I know how to do that. Let's talk about the future for a minute. How many of you have heard of CRISPR? It's where you fix DNA. And it is a technology that's going to change everything. I'd say that probably 40% of the people in your care have some kind of genetic disorder that is now or shortly will be fixable. CRISPR is going to be one of those mind-boggling, changing things. I'm running out of time. VR is going to be important. Your market's going to double soon. You know, there's going to be all kinds of cool stuff. People are going to die. But anyway, I think that we are going to find that there will be a tremendous number of opportunities and ways that the collective nature of what you're providing is going to fix and make life happier. Because many of these things don't happen in a vacuum. Communal living is cool. Can an assisted living facility look like a startup? Can it generate startups? Like I think I've got three startups left. I'm going to do one when I turn 80. I'm going to do one when I turn 85. I'm going to do one when I turn 90. And then I'm going to retire. Maybe not. But I think that we have an opportunity to embrace the future, change things, fix things, and make the world a great place. And my kids all tell me that they're going to put me in Happy Acres, and I don't know where that is. But I say, I don't think I'm going to go. Not without kicking and screaming. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nolan. We have some time here for some Q&A. I listened to the NPR How I Did That podcast. Anybody familiar with that podcast? Did you hear Nolan's episode, which is mostly about how people start companies, but of course they touched on your unique one because you had two. We talked about Atari and Chuck E.
And Etak.
And Etak. Again, see? I'm always forgetting about the GPS.
I also had the first incubator, but anyway, let's not go into
the long list.
It's a long list.
But this event's called the Innovation Forum, or Senior Living Innovation Forum. What does that word mean to you? It's a word that obviously gets thrown around a lot, but to you and, you know, seeing a lot of companies and being in California, being in the midst of a lot of innovative companies, working with people like Steve Jobs and, of course, being an innovator yourself, what do you think this industry needs to do and, you know, to kind of have that culture of innovation? Because you also said one thing on that, or something else, so you said, your biggest advice for hiring people is to not hire dead people. That's your line. Can you maybe talk about that?
Sure. When you're hiring, don't hire dead people. It sounds like it's silly, but it's true. Dead people have no life, and they're in a box. Unfortunately, some of them are still wandering around. And I learned many years ago that I hire for one characteristic. That's passion, enthusiasm, curiosity. Because in the days of the internet, if somebody has passion and curiosity, they can train themselves in any damn thing that you want them to do. But if you hire somebody that has all kinds of experience and are dead, they're just going to turn the crank, and they're not going to embrace the innovation. I can ask you, how many of you here believe in innovation? Everybody puts their hands up, right? But then if I say, what about this? They say, oh, no, not that. And so I've felt that my life is always about pushing innovative concepts onto a reluctant population. Innovation is about inventing the future. And I want to live in the future. And my runway is getting short. I want to live in the worlds that I've read about, that I can imagine. For example, self-driving cars. What does that imply? You don't need to see out anymore, so therefore, you can put all the self-driving cars underground. Think of what a city would look like if you couldn't see or hear a single car, in which every place that is currently a street is a park. And you just go down the stairs on a corner, an Uber or a Lyft picks you up, or your own car that you've signaled on your cell phone. I want that. I want to be able, I live in Santa Monica. I want to be able to drive or get, not necessarily drive, I want to get from Santa Monica to downtown Los Angeles in 7 minutes. I want to go there at 120 miles an hour. The technology's there. We can do it. We just got to believe that we can, and we got to do it. And you say, well, who's going to pay for it? Well, I'll tell you. For me to get from Santa Monica to LA, downtown LA, in 7 minutes, I'd pay $5 for that. And if you go through the math, that pays for it 100 times over. Why don't we do it? Well, we don't have self-driving cars, and you can't have exhaust down there because that drives the cost up. But we will in 4 years. We will not be driving 10 years from today, except the kooks that are out for a sport. But transportation, gone. Think about your cities. Putting in mass transit, gone. You say, well, how's that? Well, a self-driving car can provide that mile for about 35 cents. New York, the subway, to provide that mile costs over $4 a mile. So which would you rather? Go down and be in the subway with the crime and the dirt and the stuff, or would you just rather have a self-driving car? You say, well, yeah, but then won't that have a huge traffic jam? No. Because it turns out self-driving cars can drive nose to tail at speed. Self-driving cars essentially increase the capacity of any lane of traffic by 10x. Because it's moving, nose to tail, fast. I mean, this is a world I want to live in. Is that innovation? I don't think so. It's just extrapolation to where we are, to where we want to be. And so innovation, to me, is embracing everything that we can to make the world cool. And a lot of people will try things, and that's what you all need to do. You need to have 2% of your budget inventing, testing, trying things out. Because in today's world, knowledge is really what's going to be driving you. And if you're the first person to understand what the future can be and to have that innovation, you can start to build a brand, and you can start to be known, and you can start to have a real impact on life. And so go out, innovate, be a slug and a Luddite no more. I challenge you.
Thank you so much, Nolan. I think we have time for two questions. Anybody have any questions? I'm sure there's a ton of them. So on this side of the room first? Okay, they're all down there. They're always down there.
While I'm waiting,
Thank
I
you.
want you all to know that you can get these shoes on Amazon for about $35. And I just really want you to all start wearing them. Because secondarily, you won't get hit by cars nearly as often. Anyway.
So thank you so much. I have a comment and a question. So on the comment side of it, I want to thank you because we were early adopters of Atari, and some of my happiest memories as a child, including my 3rd or 4th grade birthday party, and as a parent, have been at Chuck E. Cheese. So thank you so much for creating many happy memories for millions of us.
Thank you.
And my question is, I love your idea of the dice game. And I want to know what is going to be at the top of the list for the next year for your life that you hope comes up in the dice game.
Let me repeat the question. What does the dice say for this year?
So you said your dice game is your call for 25 things you'll do in the next year.
Yeah.
What do you hope comes up for your number next year?
Wrong question. You don't want to hope, because what that says is I will hope for something that's easy. I will try to self-edit. I want to be challenged. That's where you come. What came up this last year was do art. And so I've become a kinetic artist. And I'm building things with my hands, with LEDs and with pneumatics. I mean, you know, Chuck E. Cheese was all run by pistons and pneumatics and things like that. And I'm not ready to expose, but I've actually got a gallery that wants to show all my stuff. And it's been really a giggle. 2 years ago, it was a fail, because it told me that I had to produce a musical. And so I wrote a musical, and I collaborated with one of my friends who scores movies, and he actually knows what he's doing.
Can you sing us one of the songs?
Not yet. I can't do that. I can give you some of the lyrics. No, I'll tell you the story. It's called Pong the Musical. And it's the story of a square ball that wants to become round so he can get girls. And so it's his quest through life. It's the hero's journey to become cool, because a square ball, he figures, it's so 70s. And so each scene represents a decade in video game technology. So it goes from black and white and square and clunky to black and white, or shades of gray, and then it goes to RGB, and then RGB with bigger palettes. And the last scene, he gets into, Halo and Grand Theft Auto, and he sees it as a dystopian world, and he says, boy, I'm not sure I really want this. And so, like most heroes' journey, he figures out that being a square pong ball is okay. Does that put a tear in your eye?
That's great. One more question. There we go.
I'm still going to produce that. We're looking. We decided that we needed to get one more partner involved, and it's an immersive musical. And we hope that we're going to have it opening somewhere in Los Angeles within the next year.
I have a question on your color analogy of blue being stimulating, red and yellow being calming. The studies that I've read about McDonald's and why they have chosen red and orange and yellows as their colors are because they stimulate appetite. So I'm wondering about the science behind your studies on blues being stimulating and reds being calming.
I know, when I had a restaurant company, besides Chuck E. Cheese, but that's another long story. And I did a lot of research, and it turns out that when you want to stimulate appetite, stay away from blue, stay away from purple, that they're not appetizing. Green, believe it or not, is not very appetizing either. So that kind of leaves the reds, to stimulate appetite. And so I haven't actually read any real research on that. I was really focusing more on what stimulates the secretion of melatonin in circadian rhythms. So what you're saying is probably correct. I don't know. I know most things, but not that. Intellectual arrogance, see?
Thank you so much for joining us.
It's great to be here.
And we look forward to going to Pong the Musical at some stage. But thank you so much, Nolan.
Good fun.
Awesome.